Philadelphia is one of 6 major cities in the country where the loneliness and isolation of the elderly is relieved through a volunteer-based organization whose motto is Flowers Before Bread. You'll learn more about Little Brothers, Friends of the Elderly, and you'll meet 2 new personalities on tonight's episode of Reel to Reel. Hello, everybody. I'm Pat Shelton.
And I'm Paul Perillo. Welcome to Reel to Reel. On tonight's show, we'll have a discussion about caregivers. Just exactly who are caregivers? Well, they're just like you and me. Dr. Ruth Wexberg Poe from Our Lady of Lourdes Medical Center will be joining us to tell us about what's going on at that Camden facility about caregiving.
And we'll meet 2 new members of the Reel to Reel family, Father Pat Lavin with a new feature entitled Second Thoughts, and Dr. John Kelly with our medical feature entitled Checkup. But first, Flowers Before Bread. That's the name of an organization that I just learned about this week. Let's together discover just what is Flowers Before Bread.
Little Brothers, Friends of the Elderly, is a charitable organization composed primarily of volunteers devoted to serving older people. The motto of Little Brothers is Flowers Before Bread, which describes their philosophy that the pleasures of life are as important to the human spirit as bread is to the body.
Senior citizens can benefit from Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly by developing a relationship with their volunteer, which leads to the friendship and the emotional support for elderly who are living alone. Generally, the elderly that live alone need assistance in many of the services that are not provided through agencies, like shopping, maybe transportation, visits on a holiday when the feeling of loneliness is even more difficult.
Little Brothers was founded amid the ruins of Paris in 1946 by the French nobleman Armand Marquise. The intentions were to help the elderly who had lost their families after the Second World War, so he established Little Brothers of the Poor.
I volunteered for Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly because I chose that in a volunteer class at community college. It's called English 125, and that class gets you involved in the community and different organizations, and I thought the Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly fit my personality, and I like working with older people.
Originally a community of Catholic laymen, the organization is presently non-sectarian and seeking volunteer support. Volunteers are matched with an older person for friendship, emotional support, and the sharing of special events. The visiting volunteer program produces lasting friendships based on mutual respect, trust, and understanding.
Come right in. How are you? Hi, it's fine, thanks. How you both?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I find it quite rewarding. The particular woman that I go to make visits with about 3 times a month, she's a dynamic woman. She's in her 80s, and she has a wonderful outgoing personality, and we just enjoy each other's company quite a bit.
Volunteers assist with small but essential services, such as shopping, writing letters, and personal grooming. In addition to the essentials, the volunteers refer their old friends to agencies for specialized programs to ensure their well-being and independence.
As a program coordinator for a senior center myself, I know how important it is for the seniors to have someone to come along and to see them sometimes, to visit with them sometimes, and it's just a great feeling. It makes me feel really good to do so.
The seniors enjoy having that visitor, developing that relationship, sharing with someone when those days become very, very long for them.
What we're trying to do is reach out to someone who really has no one and link that person up with a volunteer who would befriend this elderly person and let the relationship grow. So the staff and all of our resources at Little Brothers are here really to push the visiting volunteer program to make as many healthy and happy and friendly matches as possible.
The general public can become involved with Little Brothers at the Philadelphia affiliate by simply calling our office. Our telephone number is 787-3356. There's daily coverage at the office. There's someone in the office from 9 until 5 daily, Monday through Friday. We would be very happy to hear from you. Call in. Tell us what type volunteer work you've done in the past, or if you need an orientation for going in to visit someone in their home. We are in need of volunteers.
Following its creation in Paris, the Little Brothers of the Poor developed rapidly. The organization soon spread abroad, and today there are fully independent national associations in Morocco, Canada, the United States, Ireland, Mexico, and a new foundation in Spain. These national organizations are joined to form the International Federation of Little Brothers of the Poor.
What I like about this program, the Little Brothers come to visit me and treats me nice, and I love to have them to come to see me at most any time they wish to come.
It's interesting that how an organization founded and I guess got started in Paris, France, has now sprouted to so many other countries across the globe. And right here in Philadelphia, we have a chapter. And if you're interested in learning more about the group, please give us a call here to Real, or the group is also listed in the yellow pages.
I'm so glad we have one too. Good for Philadelphia. Time now for a new feature and a new face. Father Pat Lavin with our new feature, Second Thoughts.
Hi, I'm Father Pat Lavin. Welcome to Second Thoughts. Robert Flugum wasn't incorrect when he said, everything I need to learn, I learned in kindergarten. And that's where we are today. We're in Miss Gondorf's kindergarten at Queen of Heaven School in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And I have a story to tell you and the little children here. It's about my nephew, Kevin. He taught the adults in our family a great lesson recently. You see, Kevin is a 4-year-old philosopher in preschool, and he came home from school not too long ago with a new friend that he made. And he walked into the kitchen and he showed his mother a warm fuzzy, a nice warm fuzzy. This is my brother Joe's warm fuzzy. That's Kevin's grandfather. He calls him the Colonel, because my brother's a retired lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps. And I figured if the colonel could have a warm fuzzy, I can have a warm fuzzy. And so I went home to the rectory, and I was sitting in the kitchen. I made myself a warm fuzzy. It's simply a lemon with a little bit of cotton for hair. And my pastor walked in, Father Burns. He came in, and he looked at me, and he said, if you keep making warm fuzzies, they're going to come after you and take you away. And so you know what I did? I made him a warm fuzzy, and I hid it in his bedroom because I figured if I'm going to go, he's going to go too. There's a story that goes along with the warm fuzzy. When Kevin showed his mother the warm fuzzy that he had gotten in school, his mom said that was very nice. And Kevin said, every time I reach into my pocket, teacher told me I should do something kind for somebody else. And so she gave me this. At which point he went into the living room and turned on the cartoons, and then all of a sudden he decided he wanted to find out what was for supper, like all little boys and girls want to do, just like big little boys like myself want to find out what's for supper. And so he went into the kitchen to ask his mother what was for supper. And he says, Mommy, what's for supper? And she says, tacos. And he says, tacos? I hate tacos. They're lousy and they stink, and you have to eat them like this because everything falls all down you. I hate them. I don't want them. And he ran out of the kitchen and into the living room and threw himself down on the floor having a temper tantrum like all little children do, like I did when I was a little boy. And then all of a sudden the mother hears, oh, 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 God, no. And she ran in. She says, what's the matter with you? And he says, nothing. He says, I just reached into my pocket and I took out my warm fuzzy, and now I have to do something kind for somebody else. So that means I have to do something kind for you eating those lousy tacos. Oh, God. Would that all of us had a warm fuzzy in our pocket to remind us to do something kind and something gentle and something loving and something simple for somebody else. Even doing something as distasteful as eating a taco. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want your own warm fuzzy, send me a stamped, self-addressed envelope to Father Pat Lavin in care of Reel to Reel, and I'll send you one as long as the supply holds out. For Second Thoughts, this is Father Pat. I wish you shalom, shalom aleichem. And I have warm fuzzies for you.
Thank you, Father Pat. And Second Thoughts will be seen on Reel to Reel twice a month. I've got my warm fuzzy. Do you have yours, Paul?
So do I.
You're so cute.
And we want everybody to write into us, and they'll be able to get a special collector's edition warm fuzzy that'll have Reel to Reel on it.
Great. Yeah. Okay.
Still ahead on Reel to Reel, caregivers. Who are they, and what is being done locally to help people that are in need? Much more ahead on Reel to Reel. Please stay with us.
Tonight, Dolores had a few drinks, did some crack, and ended up another tragic story. Only she doesn't know it yet. Drugs make you forget. And if you forget how risky sex can be, you could catch the AIDS virus. AIDS, another way drugs can kill.
One of the most important things you can ever learn here is to pray. To speak to God, to express what is in your heart, to show your dependence on Him, to thank Him for the gift of life, for your families, and for everything you have received.
Pittsburgh scientists have made a discovery that could lead to a test that will prevent thousands of people from getting diabetes. Every cent counts.
Welcome back. So often these days we hear about caregivers, those people who are called to step in to help the needy. They're called to step in and fill a void. For instance, like a son or daughter that has to step in and care for an elderly parent. Just exactly who are the caregivers out there today? Joining us is Dr. Ruth Wexberg Poe, Director of Program and Grant Development from Our Lady of Lourdes Medical Center in Camden, New Jersey. Dr. Poe, thank you for being with us.
Glad to be here.
Define, if you will, for us what a caregiver is and what he or she is called upon to do.
The definition is really inherent in the word. It's anybody who takes care of somebody else who needs help. In our growing elderly population, we have caregivers of the elderly who may be sons or daughters, maybe nieces or nephews, sometimes they're next door neighbors, sometimes they're church members. Almost anybody could be called upon to take care of somebody who's frailer and who needs help.
Now, at Our Lady of Lourdes Medical Center in Camden, there are two different caregiver programs, I guess, if you will, that help the elderly in the society, especially in the Camden County area, although it does reach out a little bit to Burlington and Gloucester counties. But describe, if you will, the two programs that are operating at Our Lady of Lourdes.
Be glad to. We have a senior companion program, which is the only one in South Jersey. This program recruits and trains elderly people over the age of 60 who are low income, and it trains them to be able to work and to help other elderly in their homes. Now, the kinds of services they provide are the kinds of services that no insurance would cover because they're not medical services, but they can make the critical difference between somebody staying in their home and ending up having to go to a nursing home. Transportation to a doctor, helping to fill prescriptions, helping to open the mail and pay the bills, a little light housekeeping. The volunteers, who are called senior companions, receive from the medical center a free annual physical exam. They receive 2 weeks of intensive training plus ongoing in-services, And because they're low income, through a federal grant which we've received, they get a small stipend which does not affect any of their other entitlements. In other words, it doesn't affect their food stamps or Social Security or Medicaid or anything else they may have. In return, they commit to working 20 hours a week and serving at least 2 clients during that period. Our volunteers are a wonderful bunch of people. I think the oldest is currently 86 years young. Doesn't look a day over 70.
Right.
And they have been doing some wonderful things in the community for people who are more frail than they are. The second program is our Helping Hands program. Here we recruit volunteers of any age and income, everything from teenagers all the way up. They do the same kinds of services, but not necessarily so intensively. They may do an hour of service a month or 3 hours a week or whatever they want to do. There is no stipend involved, but for every hour of service they perform, they get an hour of credit. If the volunteer themselves are elderly or disabled, they can redeem that hour of credit by getting a service done for them that they couldn't otherwise get done. For example, somebody who's in a wheelchair could read to somebody who's blind, earn 2 hours of credit, and then have another volunteer drive him to the doctor when he needed to go. If they're younger, they can assign the credit to an elderly friend or relative, or if it's a Boy Scout troop doing 50 hours of community service, they can assign it to the church or synagogue that sponsors them. This is also a wonderful program. Between the two of them, we can do a lot for senior citizens that isn't getting done any other way. There's no charge to the client, so that anybody of any income can afford to have this service if they need it.
Is the role of the caregiver for everyone? Now, in certain cases, like in the case of a son or a daughter, it's almost a given that that child may have to take on the role of the caregiver. But is it for everyone, the role of a caregiver?
I don't think that everybody would be happy working in this kind of a role. But an awful lot of people are, and I'm astounded at the number of people who've really been doing this for a long time and need a lot of help. You know, it's an enormously draining thing to be caring for somebody who's elderly day after day. There are people out there who are working a full-time job, raising families, and at the same time putting in 20 or 30 hours a week caring for somebody who needs it. Our volunteers can go in and give a little respite care. We can go in and say, okay, you go out, take care of your children, go to the hairdresser, go to a movie, go for a walk in the park, and we'll take care of your elderly friend or relative while you're gone.
Now, while Our Lady of Lourdes Medical Center is taking the lead, if you will, in this area of caregiving, what would be the message that you would send out to other businesses and industry here in the Delaware Valley in an attempt to get the message across that they should also be taking the lead in helping some of their employees with caregiving?
Well, I think they should know that recent surveys have shown that probably as much as 50% of their workforce are currently caregivers for somebody, and that there's a lot of lost productivity and a lot of lost time that happens as a result. When they have to make phone calls, they have to take mama to the doctor, they're concerned because an emergency occurs. A lot of industries that are forward-thinking have started child care programs, but it is now estimated that the average woman spends 17 years caring for a child and 18 years caring for an aging relative. I think local industries have got to begin setting up programs that will help caregivers. We have been thinking, for example, of talking to local industries and saying, hey, if you will help us a little bit with financial support, just the cost, we're not looking to make any money out of this, we can set up for you a program whereby you can use volunteers within your own workforce to help others and maybe reduce some of the problems of these caregivers. In the end of it, it'll pay for the industry because productivity will increase, they'll have less lost hours from work, and less strain on employees. There's no question that if somebody's facing a lot of tension in their personal life, it's going to spill over into how effectively they work.
In the few seconds that we have left, is there a phone number that people that are watching this program can get in touch with you or your office to find out more information about this?
Definitely. For people who want to volunteer for our programs or to get help, they can call 609-757-3738. If there are any industrial sponsors out there who want to discuss with me setting up a program for them, personalized for their employees, have them call 609-757-3969.
Ruth, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
So much more ahead on this edition of Reel to Reel. Please stay with us.
Set materials for Reel to Reel provided by Tague Lumber Incorporated, serving the Delaware Valley for over 75 years.
So, Casanova, do you know what time it is?
Sometimes the best friend is an old friend.
Hi, Mrs. Costello. These are for you.
Beautiful.
Make an old friend.
We welcome your comments, suggestions, and donations and encourage you to write us at Reel to Reel, St. Charles Seminary, 1000 East Wynwood Road, Overbrook, PA 19096, or call us during regular business hours at 668-9842.
Welcome back, and here we are 2 weeks into the new year, and many people hopefully are holding true to those New Year resolutions, like making sure you eat the right food and you check your blood pressure and do all the things you're supposed to do to stay healthy.
And throw away those cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Which brings us to our new segment, Checkup. It's a medical segment with physician Dr. John Kelly. His subject today is something that's very familiar to a lot of us, diabetes.
In the United States today, there are over 11 million diabetics. Diabetes is the result of insufficient insulin action, the hormone necessary to keep blood sugar under control. There are basically two kinds of diabetes, type 1 or juvenile onset diabetes, and type 2, which commonly strikes adults. In a type 1 diabetic, the patient's body does not produce enough insulin to adequately use the sugars which are ingested. But in the case of type 2 diabetes, the opposite is true. While enough insulin is being manufactured, the body is simply not utilizing it well enough. If poorly controlled, diabetes can lead to many other serious conditions, including dehydration, lightheadedness, and even coma. The more common complications facing physicians today are helping their patients deal with chronic conditions such as kidney and nerve damage, digestive difficulties, blindness, poor circulation, and heart disease. The rate of diabetes is sure to increase in the future, due in part to the rise of obesity in the United States. Our typical lifestyle is largely to blame for this near epidemic. Fortunately, there are a few things you can do to fight back. First, lose weight. Fact is that many type 2 diabetics can actually cure themselves simply by dropping a few pounds. Weight loss can lower blood sugar by allowing insulin to work better. Secondly, exercise. Regular aerobic exercise such as biking, jogging, walking, or swimming will not only lower blood sugar, but will also help to improve circulation. The secret is to find an activity you like and stick with it. Third, eat right. Adopt a diet low in fat and high in complex carbohydrates such as fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. A diet high in fiber helps keep both cholesterol and blood sugar levels down. Oat bran, beans, and fiber supplements are extremely effective in lowering cholesterol. With more emphasis on the need for exercise and the importance of a low-fat diet today, it is likely that we'll also be seeing a lot less diabetes in the future. For Checkup, I'm Dr. John Kelly.
In tonight's installment of People and Places, it's a flashback to the 60s and a tribute to the late civil rights leader, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Before I knew it, I had been stabbed by this demented woman. It came out in the New York Times the next morning that if I had merely sneezed, I would have died. Because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960, when students all over the South started sitting in at lunch counters. And I knew that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream and taking the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1961 when we decided to take a ride for freedom and ended segregation in interstate travel. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1962 when Negroes in Albany, Georgia decided to straighten their backs up. And whenever men and women straighten their backs up, they are going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it is bent. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been here in 1963. The black people of Birmingham, Alabama, aroused the conscience of this nation and brought into being the Civil Rights Bill. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance later that year in August to try to tell America about a dream that I had had. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been down in Selma, Alabama to see the great movement there. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been in Memphis to see a community rally around those brothers and sisters who are suffering. I'm so happy that I didn't sneeze. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. And I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
It's been such a long time that so many of the young people, I wonder what they think. You know, it's like he never really was here for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember him so well. We had our celebration in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia today in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. His birthday, of course, is the 15th, and the national celebration is the 20th. It's good that we take time to remember him once a year, I think.
Until the next time, I'm Paul Pirella. We thank you very much for being with us.
And I'm Pat Shelton. We'll see you next week on Reel to Reel.
Good night.
The charismatic movement in the Catholic Church began in 1967, and since then it has touched millions of Catholics.
In 1974, Monsignor Walsh wrote A Key to the Charismatic Renewal in the Catholic Church.
Since then it has been translated in numerous languages.
The questions and answers will explain praying in tongues, the baptism of the Spirit, prophecy and healing, all within the Catholic tradition.
If you wish to order the book, just call 215-896-1970 to get your copy.